All right, get ready because we're diving deep into the world of familiars.
Familiars, those mystical creatures linked to witches.
Yeah, like the classic witch with her black cat. But we're going way beyond the stereotypes today.
Really trying to uncover the truth about these mysterious familiars.
Unravel the mystery. Were they real? Demonic entities?
Hmm.
Or just beloved pets? Or something else?
Something more, perhaps.
We're going to cover it all. The history, the myths, and what familiars mean in modern witchcraft.
It's a long history.
So to kick things off, can we talk about how an animal companion became so tied to witchcraft? I mean, how did just owning a pet land you in a witch trial?
Well, it's a dark chapter, that's for sure. During the witch trials, fear and superstition were everywhere.
Right.
And anything out of the ordinary, seen as evidence of dark magic.
Oh, yeah.
Animals, particularly those with nocturnal habits or unique appearances, they were really caught in the crossfire.
So having a black cat was enough to get you accused of witchcraft.
Absolutely. The Pendle witch trials in 1612 are a chilling example.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Several of the accused witches, like Elizabeth's device, were said to have familiars, names like Ball, Tib, and Dandy.
Wow. Just the names themselves do sound a bit creepy, don't they?
They do, yeah. And it wasn't just names.
Uh-huh.
Bridget Bishop, one of the first women executed in the Salem witch trials, was accused of having a strange black creature following her.
Really?
And that really fueled the suspicion around her.
That's so interesting how animals like black cats, crows, owls, toads, they all became symbols of witchcraft. But were they always seen that way?
Not at all. Before the witch hunts, a lot of cultures actually saw animals as sacred guides, protectors, a link to the spiritual world.
Oh, okay.
For example, the Norse believed in spirit animals called fylgjer.
Fylgjer.
Yeah. They were often depicted as powerful creatures like bears or wolves embodying a person's fate or inner nature.
So not demonic, but more like guardian spirits.
Exactly. The Celts also had a strong tradition of animal totems, seeing animals like stags, wolves, and hares as sources of wisdom and power.
It's wild how perceptions could change so drastically. What caused that shift?
Well, the witch trials were a time of immense societal anxiety. Fear of the unknown was at a fever pitch. Anything unexplained, attributed to the supernatural.
Yeah, I see that.
And often, with demonic connotations, that fear-driven mindset really demonized familiars.
Turning them from companions to, well, instruments of evil.
Right.
But that fear-based perspective misses a much richer history. The idea of an animal as a spiritual guide is something we still see today.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that indigenous cultures all over the world have always respected animal spirits as guides and protectors. Their traditions offer a totally different view of familiars.
Yeah, that makes sense. Challenging that negative portrayal that came out of the witch trials.
Right.
It's like we swung from one extreme to another. Seeing animals as sacred companions, then fearing them as demonic entities.
Yeah.
But the concept of the familiar, it never really went away, did it?
You're right, it stuck around and over time evolved into something much more complex. And that brings us to one of the more intriguing parts of the familiar lore, the shapeshifting. The idea that a familiar wasn't just an animal, but a spirit that could take on different forms, even human ones.
Okay, now that's where things get spooky. We're talking complete transformation, right? Not just like a cat changing in size.
Right. The belief that a familiar could appear as a shadowy figure or even as a seemingly normal person, that fueled a lot of the mystery and the fear.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the intrigue. But I'm really curious, how do these ideas about familiars translate to modern witchcraft? Do witches today still believe in familiars? What do they believe?
That's a really good question, and it's one that takes us to a really interesting place where tradition and modern practice kind of meet.
Okay, so less devil's minion and more like spiritual sidekick.
Yeah,
I like that.
exactly. Today, it's all about partnership, like a deep connection between a witch and an animal, or even a spirit, that can have a huge influence on their magical practice.
So does that mean we're talking about real pets as familiars?
Uh,
Or is there something more to it?
well, it's actually both. Some witches believe that their pets, whether they're cats or dogs or rabbits or even snakes, can be magical allies, offering protection and guidance. They
Really?
might have like heightened intuition,
Oh, interesting.
showing up during rituals or sensing like energy shifts.
Is there any evidence that these animals really do have this heightened intuition? Or is it more anecdotal, like
Yeah.
based on personal experience?
That's a question that causes a lot of debate.
Yeah.
While there's no hard scientific proof that animal familiars have some kind of sixth sense about magic, a lot of practitioners believe their pets are sensitive to those energies. like a deeper connection to the spiritual world than you'd expect.
I see. So it's more about that bond and the intuitive connection, even if we can't fully explain it.
Right.
You mentioned that familiars don't have to be pets. So what else can they be?
Well, the modern understanding goes beyond the physical world. Many witches work with spirit familiars.
Spirit familiar.
Yeah, these are non-physical beings that exist on the astral plane. They're kind of like spirit guides, but with a specific connection to animal energy.
Now that you mention it, the astral plane, that's something that's always associated with like esoteric or mystical traditions. Could you explain what that is exactly and how it ties into spirit familiars in witchcraft?
Sure. The astral plane, to put it simply, is a realm beyond the physical. It's a plane of consciousness and energy. Imagine a dimension where thoughts and emotions and spiritual energies all connect. That's where witches believe they connect with spirit guides, deities, and, yeah, spirit familiars.
Okay.
And those spirit familiars can take the form of any animal, a wolf or an eagle, or even a little hummingbird.
So you might encounter a spirit familiar during meditation or dream work,
Yeah.
or even astral projection.
Exactly. Those practices help witches attune their consciousness to the astral realm. And then there's another category of familiars, elemental familiars.
Elements familiars. That's a new one for me. What are those? How are they different from spirit familiars?
Well, as you might guess, they're beings that are linked to the elements of nature: earth, air, fire, and water. They embody those qualities and energies. So a fire familiar might be a salamander, which is associated with flames. A water familiar could be a serpent, symbolizing the power of water.
This is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So many different types of familiars, each with their own energy connected to nature. It really makes you wonder if we all might have a familiar without even knowing it. What are some signs that someone might have a familiar, whether it's physical or spiritual?
Great question. One sign might be that you're really drawn to a certain animal, like you feel their energy.
Okay.
You might also see them in your dreams over and over, or just run into them a lot in your life.
I've been having a lot of dreams about owls lately. Could that be a sign?
Maybe pay attention to those signs and see where they lead. Another sign is a pet that always seems to be around when you're doing magical work. Or maybe an animal that's unusually protective, like a guardian spirit.
So if someone feels drawn to an animal and wants to connect with a familiar, is there a specific way to do that? Is it like in the old stories where a witch is given a familiar?
Not quite. In modern witchcraft, connecting with the familiar is about respect and invitation, creating a space for that connection to develop naturally.
So no forcing it.
No, it's more about opening yourself up to the possibility and letting that connection grow.
I see. So how would someone invite a familiar into their life? Are there any specific techniques or practices they can try?
Well, start by noticing the animals that really catch your attention. Is there one that keeps popping up? Explore that. Dream work and meditation are really powerful too. You could even ask in a meditation, who is my familiar? Just be open to whatever images or feelings come up.
I like that. And what about divination? Could you use something like tarot cards or a pendulum to get insight into a potential familiar?
Definitely, divination can be a great tool for exploring your connection to the animal world. Some tarot cards, for instance, are associated with specific animals and their energies.
So let's say you figured out who your familiar is, whether it's your pet or a spirit animal or an elemental being. How do you actually work with them magically? Is it like those old depictions of familiars fetching ingredients or making potions?
Not really. It's less about giving them tasks and more about their presence and energy working with your intentions.
Oh, they're not literally doing things, but their energy helps your magic.
Exactly. Imagine a cat curled up next to you while you meditate. Its purring creates a vibe that helps you connect to the spiritual realm.
I like that.
Or picture a crow showing up whenever you cast a circle. It reminds you that everything's connected.
Yeah.
It's about that synergy, working together in harmony.
That's a great way to put it. It sounds like the magic of familiars is really about that connection and the shared energy between the witch and the animal or spirit. A partnership based on trust and respect.
Exactly. And that leads to a really important question. What does that partnership look like in practice? How do witches and their familiars actually work together to make their magic stronger?
Okay, so we've talked about this idea of a partnership, but what does that really look like in practice? How do witches and their familiars work together, to enhance their magical practice?
Well, it's not really about the familiar doing specific things. It's more about their energy, working with the witch's intentions.
Okay, but could you give us like some specific examples? I'm trying to picture how this works during like a ritual or spell.
Sure. Let's say a witch is doing a ritual for protection. Their familiar, maybe a dog, might sit next to them. Just their steady presence, grounding the energy, reinforcing that intention to create a safe and protected space.
Oh, so the familiar is like an anchor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or imagine a witch using herbs for healing. They're familiar, maybe a cat might be drawn to certain herbs, almost like guiding the witch to the best ones to use for the spell.
That's so cool. It's like the familiar is adding its own intuition to the mix.
Exactly. And for those working with spirit familiars, it can be different. Let's say a witch needs inspiration for a creative project. They might meditate with their spirit familiar, maybe a fox, and suddenly have these insights or messages that shape their work.
So the familiar is like a muse.
Exactly. There are so many possibilities. It really depends on the bond and how open the witch is to the familiar's wisdom and energy.
It sounds like it's a very personal relationship that grows and changes over time.
Oh, absolutely. It's a journey. They're learning to communicate and work together in a way that respects both the witch and the familiar.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive, from the dark history of familiars to their modern-day role as companions and magical allies.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey.
It really shows how our understanding of that human-animal bond has evolved over time.
It really does. Whether you look at familiars through folklore or spirituality or just plain appreciation for animals, there's no denying that sense of magic.
It makes you think that maybe the real magic of familiars isn't just about the mystical stuff, but about that deep connection they represent, that link between humans and the animal world, a reminder that everything's connected.
That's beautifully put. And maybe that's the most important thing we can take away from all this. Whether you believe in spirit familiars or you just see the special bond we can have with animals, there's something amazing about that connection. It touches on the very essence of magic.
I love how you've brought us back to that sense of wonder. The magic that's already there, in nature and in the bonds we share with living beings. It reminds us to value those connections and be open to the mysteries around us.
Definitely. And who knows, maybe you have a familiar waiting to connect with you, a furry or feathered, or even a spirit companion ready to start a magical journey with you.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought to end on. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of familiars, I encourage you to look at the animals in your life. Listen to your gut, be open to the unexpected, and you might just find a magical partnership waiting for you. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey